so excited to have my bestie friend, Dinah McBride. She was in life coach training with me. So she's a certified life coach and she is awesome. She was basically the leader of our group there. I feel like you were. And
I don't know.
she's very well respected. Everyone in the class loved her, including me. And she is just a generous soul. And she's such a good coach that I've actually had her coach my family members. And she's a life changer. So I'm just so glad she's here and willing to talk about her marriage with me because she's awesome. And I can't wait for you guys to get to know her. So without any further ado, Dinah, let's talk a little bit about marriage before and marriage after and kind of what that looked like for you. But would you want to introduce yourself for a sec, like say where you're from?
Sure.
Tell us a little about you before you start.
Yeah, absolutely. First, thank you. Those are very kind words. I did love being in certification with you, Shari. You just really stuck out to me. And so we had good times, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Really good. So a little bit about myself is I grew up in the Salt Lake City area. And I met my husband in high school, actually.
Oh,
And yeah, we were friends. We hung out in mutual groups. We went to junior prom together.
oh, wow.
I
I
don't know
did
if
not
that
know
means
this.
anything. Then we went our separate ways for college and reconnected later on, and then have been on this wild journey. We've lived many years on the East Coast, which we loved, and then we ended up and landed in the Midwest. We're currently in Wisconsin and have been here for 9 years. And it's been wonderful and challenging and all the things, but mostly good.
Mm-hmm. And do you have 5 or 6 kids? I was trying to remember before the call.
Yeah, we have 6 kids,
Yeah.
5 girls and 1 boy.
Mm-hmm.
We just set our oldest one out into the world last week,
Wow.
and there we go. We've been successful with one. She can be
Awesome.
independently living, so that's good.
Love it.
Yes.
Okay.
Your question was, you got to tell me your question again.
Okay. So let's talk about where the marriage was before and where it is now and what that has looked like for you. Can you tell me about what have you worked through or
Yeah.
what does that look
Okay.
like?
Yeah. So I grew up, and I think this is helpful because my parents were divorced.
Mm,
Divorced when I was 8. And so it was a big part of my identity that my parents were divorced because all my friends' parents were married.
mm,
And I knew that I wanted to be married, and I knew that I wanted a marriage that lasted. So what that did for me as a young person is like, I was very observant to
mm-hmm,
all the marriages around me, the ones that I wanted to emulate, like my roommates' parents that we would go
mm-hmm,
visit on the weekends, or my friends' parents, and what did I like and didn't like. So I was always like kind of looking for this ideal relationship, which I think worked in my favor and not in my favor, because then I came in with a lot of expectations of this perfect marriage that I was hoping to create because my parents didn't have the perfect marriage.
right.
I wasn't going to make their same mistake. I was going to have the perfect marriage, which meant no fighting, no arguing, always on the same page. We always had the same goals. This is my vision for my
Of
marriage,
course, of
right? Like,
course.
we're going to be happily in love and happily ever after. And it wasn't long till I realized that's actually not the way marriages work. And it was little things. My husband is fantastic and probably the most easygoing person, especially those first few years. So I can't say that we struggled, but I struggled inside because it wasn't turning out how I had envisioned my whole growing up years. Like, I felt inadequate in some areas, and I felt maybe left out or unsure. I very low confidence in what I was doing, trying to reach this ideal.
Mm-hmm.
I idealized my mother-in-law, and so I felt like I could never like be in her shoes, and she was a
Uh-huh.
baker and cooker and just like this really beautiful homemaker, which I was not. I didn't know how to cook. I didn't know how to sew. I didn't know how to clean. Like I just was really learning. And so I felt really a lot of doubt about my abilities to be a wife. Which, and then I had high expectations for my husband. So that meant, why isn't he communicating? Why isn't he taking the garbage out? Why isn't he leading the family? Why isn't he all the things, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So that's, I mean, and then we just started having babies, and we had all of our children one after another every 2 years. And he was busy with school and with his studies. And I felt kind of like alone, left behind with my children as he's like pursuing his thing, so, it wasn't all bad. I should say that. Like, of
Right.
course, we had a good relationship and friendship. It
Right.
wasn't what I had anticipated.
Mm-hmm. So
Right.
where did the story go from there for you? Like what made a difference? Where did you have a shift or tell like what? Yeah.
Okay, so part of it was the realizing where my husband was in training, so he's a physician, and we did the whole residency piece. And so when he was gone, it was kind of this mind shift of I have to work every day. I can't just not work. I have my own job, and my job is the home and the family and the kids, and and he has his job. So it started with just kind of separating that out in my mind
Mm-hmm.
and being
Mm-hmm.
okay with that.
Uh-huh.
And then it went to, I need to be a little bit independent on him. I was depending on him for all this
Mm-hmm.
emotional feedback and
Mm-hmm.
um, ways to feel better about myself. And so
Mm-hmm.
I had to start pulling that away and become more independent, because he didn't have the resources during that time, especially
Mm-hmm.
that emotional bandwidth to then take care of me, which I
Mm-hmm.
started to learn. So
So
what,
can I ask
go
you a
ahead.
question? What did
Yeah,
that look like? What did that look like in real life?
like having in real life how I was making those differences,
Yes.
those
Yes.
changes.
Uh-huh.
What it looked like was realizing when I want something done in the home, I need to do it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Instead of whining and crying to my husband, like, why haven't you done this thing that you didn't even know
Mm-hmm.
that needed to be done?
Mm-hmm.
And I just owning up to the work that I needed to do in
Mm-hmm.
order to run the house that I wanted to. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like taking responsibility
Mm-hmm.
instead of
Mm-hmm.
wanting to place everything on him. Well, why isn't he mowing the lawn? Why isn't he?
Uh-huh.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it didn't get done, then it was my fault and not his fault, which is fine too. And
Mm-hmm.
that was okay.
Right. Right.
And then it also was not needing him to be home at a certain time. Like there
Oh,
would
I
be
had to do
lots of
that one.
disappointment. And it was 5 o'clock, the dinner's on the
Uh-huh.
table. Where's my husband? And being very disappointed at that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And realizing I'm just going to be happy whenever he shows up. It's going to be okay. He can come at 5, he can come at 7, and whenever he happens to come, I'm going to be excited then.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of making that transition
Right.
with that. It wasn't until a couple of years after what I'm describing that I found my own life coach.
Mm-hmm.
That's when things really started to skyrocket for me. This, it was what that introduced to me is to really see him as a human being on his own.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think sometimes we have this idea that we're married, we're like entwined with one another, we're supposed to reflect one another, and
Right.
and it's we're like
Become become one, right?
we've become one,
Right.
right? Yeah, and so it actually was very helpful for me to separate that out, and for me to see him as a human being, a
Mm-hmm.
person with feelings and dreams, and
Mm-hmm.
not that I didn't see him, but and to honor and respect him as a person independent of myself.
Right.
That was a game changer for me,
Mm-hmm.
because then I could just allow him to pursue what he wants, or to be angry and not take it personally, or
Right.
to have his ups and downs, and to recognize his strengths for what it was for himself, even
Mm-hmm.
if it wasn't a strength for me. Just to
Right.
have that separation
Right.
started really helping me love him, instead of fighting for this at oneness that
Mm-hmm.
I had like thought was the vision.
Mm-hmm.
Now my job was just to know him and love him for who he was.
So did that come easily, just accepting that? Was it just a quick mind shift thing that you were able to do, or what did it look like for you?
No, it was years. It was the introduction of the idea
Mm-hmm.
that he's a person, an individual, and that my job is just to love him. I think that was the concept that it was introduced to me, and I rejected it first.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I at first rejected it. I was like, "What are you even talking about?" But I think it was just this openness. I was in a space where I was open to wanting to learn more and know
Mm-hmm.
more. And so then it changed and evolved over months, and to, well, maybe it's possible that I'm seeing this wrong. And when I opened up to that this is a possibility that I'm wrong, because I don't like being wrong. But when I was in a space where I could be wrong, then I allowed that concept to kind of settle in. It's been years in the making. I'm still learning and growing in my marriage. But I also, with coaching, grew in confidence as my own individual person as well. So simultaneously, I'm respecting and honoring him for him, and I'm honoring me for me, and respecting myself. And so all of a sudden, we are these two beautiful human beings that I had always just lumped together as one and intertwined. And seeing that really was helpful.
So do you think, because some people will think, well, if you're more distinct and separate, then you're going to grow separately apart. So can you answer to that? What?
Sure. And at first, that's what it felt like, because then
Mm-hmm.
I was noticing all the differences.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, well, gosh, then why are we even married? We don't even like the same movies. We don't like the same activities. We don't even like we don't
Mm-hmm.
do the same thing. We don't parent the same,
Yeah.
it kind of emphasized the differences
Mm-hmm.
at first.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, for anyone in that situation who's trying to look at their husband as a full human themselves, yeah, that might come up,
Mm-hmm.
where you feel a little like, well, wait, now we're just different. Why are we together? But I would say stick with it, because the ultimate goal for me in this idea was to just love him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here are all the ways that we are different. Can I love that
Mm-hmm.
because it's different?
Mm-hmm.
Then was able to reframe it to, no, this actually is good that we're different. And this happened with like his hobbies, how we parent, all the ways that I began identifying him as a human being, and then loving him like that.
That is so awesome to hear. So I feel like I had the same road. I went on this same road, and it was a lot to wrap my head around, and especially being wrong. I did not like that at all.
Me neither.
So, so what would you, if you could give advice to the newlywed Dina, the one who'd been through this, hard time growing up with divorced parents, and then comes into this marriage with all these expectations, what would you tell her now that you have, how long have you been married now?
We are going on 23 years in
Yeah.
December.
So yeah, a long time. So what would
Long
you tell her? Can you think of, or your daughters, you have 5 daughters. What are you going to tell them?
time. Um, That's such a good question. I think it does come down to the expectation, and is hard. That's hard because you do want to have some expectation. You're in this relationship, and there is a code to being in that relationship, meaning you're going to be faithful and loyal to one another. But like on the smaller things, having no expectation. So when I learned this concept, I told my husband and I were having an argument. I remember we were like in the car driving, and I said to him, listen, I don't have any expectations of you, because I had just kind of learned this like
Mhm.
idea, and I'm thinking this is a really good thing. I have really good news. And my husband was blown away. He's like, what? You don't have any expect. My wife has no expectation of me. I'm like, wait, this is good news, because anything that you offer, I'm thrilled at. I love. And it took him a while to wrap his head around. But do you see the difference? If I am just ready to receive anything that he offers in the way that he wants to offer it, and I receive it well, I receive it with love and gratitude,
Mhm.
then I'm able to show up in the marriage in a different way
Right. It's
than
kind
if
of a game changer, right?
yeah, then if I come in with like, oh, husbands are always supposed to do this, and always take out the garbage, always put the kids to bed. They're always the one to pay the bills. They're always the one to whatever your list is.
Mhm.
And then he doesn't do it is so disappointing. And there's a lot of resentment and blame, and just I think for my daughters, I would say receive whatever he has to offer in the way he has to offer it.
Awesome. I really love that. And what would you say? I have another question. What would you say about how you, I guess, started to show up for yourself? How did you start caring about your own desires? Because I'm pretty sure you, like me, had a big like hang up with wifing and mothering and how anything you do for you is selfish. And so can you speak to that? Because you have 6 kids. So let's hear it. Like, what's the
Yeah.
reality of that?
Yeah, that really started with small, like like working out, needing time to work out. It was the realization that actually it started out just for me, but then it started out like, wait, I am such a better mother when
Mhm.
I do this.
Mhm.
So then it was both for me and them.
Mhm.
And then I could drop the guilt about spending that hour away at night when my kids were really little. Like I'd go at night to the gym.
Mhm.
Um, because I recognized that I was a better person because of it. So then fast forward, that was when my kids were little. Fast forward when I found coaching,
Mhm.
it was this process of discovering my desires. I had pushed all that down for my family
Mhm.
and didn't even really know what I wanted
Mhm.
or what desires did I have? What did I want? I had no clue at all. So that took time to unearth and to discover for myself
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
what is it that I really want? And it was a struggle to not feel guilty about this time that I was spending on my thought work or my reading or learning and the coaching that I was doing. There was a time where I felt a lot of guilt. So what would I say about it is you are a human being too. And you also have wants and desires and needs. And when you can take care of those things, you show up so much better in the world for your family, for your work, for your job, for your name, for all of it. And that's the gift you give. You give first to yourself, you fill that bucket however you need to fill it, and then you're able to show up in these other places. So it's a win-win.
It's a total win-win. I had the exact
Yeah.
same thing. I was just, it's such an awesome thing to come to, isn't it? and to not feel guilty anymore, even better.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's so freeing. I remember
Oh,
feeling
great.
like, and again, for your listeners, it's a process. This is years in the making. The first it's
Mhm,
like, oh, I don't know, I shouldn't
mhm.
spend this time. Like, I should be doing the dishes or cleaning up or running that errand or ministering to so and so, right? I should be
Right.
doing those things. Um, but then it moves into, wait, I have these like wings, and I feel like I want to fly. That was the way
Mhm.
I could describe it. Like, I feel like I want to fly, and I just felt myself. And then once you do fly, you get a better view of all of it.
Oh,
The
I
children,
love that.
the family, the house, and it's so freeing. You see it all differently.
I love that. I love that you can see it differently from above because you really do. You have risen above like the feeling stuck and depressed and I have to do these things and if I don't do them no one will and all the things, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Um so I want to ask you a couple more questions before we end. And the main this might be hard for you, but hopefully not after all your life coaching. What
Mhm.
would you like to acknowledge yourself for in your marriage? Like what would you say, good job, me? Like, I'm so proud of myself for doing that.
In my marriage,
Or life in general. Like,
yeah. Oh, this
it's
is
a
hard,
hard
right?
one. I knew it was going to be hard.
Yeah, it is hard to pin down because it feels like just life. But if I look back, what am I proud of? Um, I I really feel like my capacity to love has 10x itself through coaching. And I love very well. And I am very empathetic and I can put myself in people's problems and I can love them there without needing any return from them and without needing. And so that goes for my husband. I can love him and he
Right.
doesn't have to pay me back in any way for that.
hmm
It is unconditional. There's no strings attached. And that feels so good because I'm the one that gets to feel that love. That
Right.
I think that is the one thing I've learned is really truly how to love people.
And that is true about empathizing too, Dina. I know that about you, and it is absolutely true. And it's come from doing all this work. It wasn't just placed before you.
No,
It
100%.
it took some work. And so that's really good to know. And I want you to just what's the takeaway for everybody from this call that you would most like if, when your daughters get on and listen to this someday, like what would your biggest takeaway be from this call?
Um, well, first that marriages are challenging and that's okay. It's
hmm
okay that your husband is growing and that you are growing. But the biggest thing I would say is that you are a human being just as much as your husband is a human being. And you both have intrinsic needs for connection and fulfillment and purpose and all those things. And so don't deny yourself that for your husband and children, but also don't deny your husband that either,
hmm
right? And in the fulfilling of those, you understand yourself, and I think that translates to understanding your children and your husband. Your ability to love them will grow as you honor yourself as a human being with true needs like everyone
Okay,
else.
I have to ask you one more question, even though
Okay.
we're done. But this is a question. When you started looking at your true needs and accepting them and acting on them, was he upset about it? Did he feel like you were letting the family down, letting him down? What did that look like? Just quickly.
Um, no, I don't think it upset him because I think what happened is once I started changing, it changed everything for the family.
Mm,
Because quite honestly, I am the heart of the home. Like you hear that term all the
right.
time. But
Right.
when once I started changing, that changed all my interactions with my husband, with my children. It made everything. I know that I'm speaking only for what I felt, but
Mhm.
There's less contention, less confrontation, less nagging, less of all
Mhm.
of that. So I don't remember him saying ever like, oh, you shouldn't spend so much time, you're neglecting the family. No, he was
Mhm.
like, what are you learning? And with that, he has also made such great gains of coaching just secondhand from
Right.
me. Yeah.
Right.
And my daughters too. If we could go a whole other podcast on how they've been able to relate to their friends because of the things that now we talk about as a family.
That is awesome. You have just you've been amazing in so many ways. Way before you even became a certified life coach. When I first met you, I'm like, she's an amazing person. She's
Oh,
amazing.
sorry,
I'm so
you're so
glad you're
sweet.
willing to share with us today because it's going to be so helpful for so many people. So,
Well, I hope so.
thanks for
Coaching
being
has
here.
been for me.
And can you tell them how, if they wanted to email you, if they had questions for you, how would they get a hold of you?
Yes, I am accepting clients. If people want to get a hold of me, you can email me at hello@dinahmcbride.com. Now it's spelled DINAH McBride, McBride. Hello@dinahmcbride.com.
And I can vouch for the fact that she is an amazing coach and would be totally awesome to connect with. So definitely get a hold of Dina if you'd like some one-on-one coaching, and she will change your life.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Dina.
Thank you.